Here we are in OneNote. You're not required to, but if you have access and would like to follow along, we're currently in the OneNote file of the Modal Node System, MNS System Presentation 1117 Excel Modes Absolute Numbering System. One of only 2 presentations thus far, but we plan on adding plenty more shortly. Also note that we're calling it Excel in the title because this presentation ties into another presentation where we actually build these tables out in Excel, where we're going to spend more time on just building the tables and using some Excel formatting and jargon, whereas here we'll be able to spend all of our time just talking about the concepts. However, I highly recommend, whether you're a music major, just someone that wants to learn music, or someone that wants to learn Excel, to build tables. They're perfect for just practicing Excel. Music is, by the way. And they're also really helpful for us to be able to visualize things. We're gonna have to, in music, visualize things in our mind. Visualize tables. You're gonna have the problem visually. What do you want on the x-axis? What do you want on the y-axis? Many people that use an instrument visualize, of course, the instrument, which is great, like a fretboard or a keyboard. Those are also great things that you can work on your visualization with, not just by handling the instrument, but by recreating the instrument in a spreadsheet. So we also going to use this possibly as a resource that's not in Excel, because some people have an aversion to Excel, even when they're not building in Excel, which is something we really need to work on. Some exposure therapy, I think, would be really useful for a lot of people. But I'm not. This is not medical advice here, so I don't want to. Take it with a grain of salt. Don't sue me or anything for traumatizing anyone. So, okay. Anyways, let's get to our general idea. Is that we would like to learn a system that's going to open up the fretboard as easily as possible. If we look at the fretboard, these are all the notes that are in the key of C and the related diatonic modes. The argument is, what should we spend most of our time learning? Should it be the notes? I'm saying why? No, I'm saying why? Because if you learn the notes, you will be able to play in one key, but it's not transferable to playing from the key of C and related notes to the key of C sharp or D or E. It's not movable. What about if I learn relative positions, scale shapes? And this is going to be a numbering system, often based on the major scale, but using each of the modes, major, minor, Dorian, as the one. That's maneuverable up and down the fretboard. However, it messes up the numbering system within the modes, within the same shape. When I go from the major scale to the minor scale, I end up with different numbering systems. That's a problem. What do you want to learn? You want to learn the numbering systems that don't change, which I would call modal points. Now, I want to point out at this time that this is clear in some systems, and some people I've gotten some comments saying, well, you're just doing the caged system as though it's a whole new thing, or you're just doing like the Nashville numbering system as though it's a whole new thing or something, or like trying to take credit for the Nashville. Look, I think that the caged system and breaking the guitar into 5 components and memorizing those shapes is beautiful. I'm happy to be associated with it. Great thing to do. I think the Nashville numbering system is great, right? That's going to be the idea, that you're going to have a permanent numbering system based on the modes. That's in part exactly what I'm doing here. I'm happy to be associated with that. I think they're doing it the right way. What I would like to add here is the problem that I see oftentimes is when people present something like the cage system or the Nashville numbering system, they present it, or it's thought of in some circles, as like a hack. Like you're doing a shortcut. You're kind of cheating the system. And there's something kind of cool about that too. You're like, I'm doing the easy way. I know some inside knowledge that you don't know. I'm doing it the easy way. And that's kind of cool. And to some degree, that's the case. But I want to propose the idea here that no, the Nashville people, as well as the caged people, are doing it the more sophisticated way, the cleaner way, the leaner and meaner way than the traditional naming system. They're actually doing it the right way. They're removing the clutter. They're getting rid of the bureaucracy. They're making it, that's the clean way to see it, right? But it doesn't advance. We don't follow it. I'm going to follow the logic all the way through. Why doesn't the logic follow all the way through? Because the naming system is going to cause us a hurdle. Because when we get to the naming system of chords, if you name the chord the 1, 4, 5, if I'm in the key of C and I name the chord the 1, and then I say this is the 5, I can build then a chord off it. But what happens when I build the chord off of it? That means on the 1, it's going to be a major chord. But on the 5, what are you going to call that chord? You're going to have to call it a major chord when you're talking to people, right? And so the language that we're using, we're not going to call it a 5 chord. We could in Nashville music, right? But when you actually write, how do you build the chord? Well, you build the chord by taking the 1, 3, 5 of the scale. Okay, well, what did you just say there? You said you took the 1, 3, 5 of the scale, but I don't want to change it from the 5 using Nashville music system, which I would call equivalent to Mixolydian point, right? I don't want to change it from the 5, and you just told me that I have to build a chord off of it by calling it a 1, 4, 5. What am I going to call the chord name? I'm going to call it a G major. Well, now you just told me that it's not even a Mixolydian at all, right? Now we're going to call it as though it's a major, a G major. It's not a different position. See, the naming system forces us out of the clear logic, the clean way to see it. The shortcut is the clean way to see it. The Nashville music people are right? That's so we want to So what I want to do is kind of follow the logic through, and I just want to emphasize the idea here that the system that we have for writing it down is the bloated bureaucratic system. That's like we want to learn both languages. Like if you're in Washington, I want to be able to go to Washington. I want to be able to jump through the hoops. I want to play the bureaucratic games, even though they waste so much time, and write it down in the jargon, whatever jargon that they want, even though it's such a waste of time. And then I want to go back to the private sector and do it the right way, which is the Nashville music system, the clean way, the way that actually works, right? So I have to do what I got to do when I go to deal with the bureaucracy, when you write the thing down, and then when I'm actually composing, when actually learning stuff, I'm going to do it in the private sector the way normal people would do it if they weren't dealing with craziness, right? So I'm happy to call it Nashville numbering system if those guys are right? The Cage system is right. It's just that what I'm going to keep on doing is try to follow the logic through so that we see the full logic. That will allow us to learn it in the cleanest way possible and allow us a bridge to see the numbering system so I can easily go back and forth communicating with people on a Nashville music system, but also go to Washington and deal with those sons of, and whatever hoops we got to jump through so we can continue with our business on the private sector where we do things the right way.